Okay, so welcome everyone. We are live today for Migrant Women Reality Watch number 17. Today I have two guests, Antonia from Mexico, but she's based in Spain, and she is the director and the founder of our member association Mujeres Supervivientes, which translated roughly to English means surviving women. And then we also have with us Aleksandra, a Radical Girls member and also feminist activist based in Poland and Polish herself. So today's format is going to be a bit different because Antonia speaks Spanish and Aleksandra speaks English and other languages too. So I'm going to be translating Antonia's answers. I'm not going to be translating all the way through. There are some things that I will leave it just like that because otherwise it would be such a long interview and we would have to take so much of our time, and it can be also a bit confusing for the viewers. But yes, if you have any question, don't hesitate to write on the chat that you can see here, and we will try to address those throughout the interview. So today's interview is about women's sexual and reproductive autonomy. We decided to have this talk because of many reasons, but mainly because of what's happening in Poland, and Aleksandra will revert to that shortly. But because we also think that it's time that we migrant women and feminists in general take a really good feminist position towards the issues of abortion. But yeah, we will go into more detail throughout the interview, and I hope it will be clear for everyone what is really the aim of this interview today. Just a little technicality: if you wish to rewatch this video or share it with your friends or your peers, your colleagues, it will stay on the Migrant Women Reality Watch playlist here on our Facebook page. But we also have a YouTube channel in which we upload all over the Migrant Women Reality Watch. It's called European Network of Migrant Women NO. So please feel free to go there, to subscribe. We need as many subscribers as possible, and to share the feminist analysis that we've been trying to gather for women and girls globally. So yeah, without further ado, I'm going to ask both of you to present yourselves, and also just start with a little question of why do you think it's important to be here and to have this conversation about women's sexual and reproductive autonomy. I'm just going to translate the question really quickly to Antonia, and then whichever you want to go first, maybe Alex, you can go. Vale, Antonia, acabo de dar las bienvenidas al público y todo más. Y la primera cuestión sería realmente que os presentas, que te presentes, que digas un poco quién eres, de dónde vienes, tu recorrido, así brevemente para las personas que están aquí escuchando, y también por qué te parece importante hacer parte de esta conversación sobre la autonomía reproductiva y sexual de las mujeres. Empezamos por Alex y luego contigo. ¿Puede ser?
Sí,
okay.
Sí.
Okay, go ahead, Alex.
Okay, hi Adriana, Antonia, hi everyone. My name is Aleksandra. I am a feminist currently based in Poland. And just let me get into this very important question: why does women's reproductive autonomy is important to me? I think it's actually at the root of the feminist struggle. It's an issue that shows directly how the female sex can be under attack and is under attack, how the female sex is exploited under the patriarchy. I think it links very well to the broad discrimination that women face. It's not a singular issue. It's actually very much linked to the discrimination that women face in all societies, really. And yeah, I think it's absolutely crucial to discuss it when we speak about women's liberation.
Thank you, Alex, and I'm really looking forward to delve much into Poland after we present ourselves, and I'm sure that you have a lot of interesting things to say. Bueno, ahora pasamos a ti, Antonia, si te puedes presentar un poquito y por qué crees que es importante hacer parte de esta conversación hoy.
Sí, muchas gracias. Mi nombre es Antonia, Soy una mujer migrante, feminista, que lucha por los derechos de las mujeres, de las niñas, que piensa que la lucha es global, desde el norte global, el sur global, y poder establecer estrategias de defensa y de denuncia para poder sostener la vida de las mujeres, tanto no ser asesinadas como lo que tiene que ver con nuestros derechos sexuales y reproductivos. ¿Por qué creo que es fundamental la defensa de las mujeres en sus derechos sexuales y reproductivos? Porque creo que todo el poder del patriarcado se juega en el cuerpo de las mujeres. Es decir, nos obligan a tener hijos, a parir. Hay una explotación de nuestros cuerpos con la sostenibilidad de la vida a través del trabajo de la reproducción social, que es la que sostiene este sistema capitalista. Y esto mismo se hace con la naturaleza. Lo que sostiene el sistema capitalista es la explotación de los cuerpos de las mujeres y de la naturaleza. Es un expolio que es justamente lo que sostiene este sistema. Y si nosotras nos rebelamos y ponemos límites, pues claro que va a haber un castigo, una persecución a las mujeres que desafiamos este poder. Gracias.
Gracias, Antonia. For the viewers who don't understand Spanish, very roughly, Antonia is very happy to be here. And she says, just like Alex, that the battlefield of the patriarchy is located in women's bodies, and it is where capitalism and the capitalist patriarchy really try to enforce their power and structures, and everything is played in women's bodies. And this has got to do also with land extractivism and things that we have talked in a previous Migrant Woman Reality Watch. So yeah, muchas gracias, Antonia y Alex, for this first question. I'm going to ask a question to Antonia now. I will say it in Spanish first for her to understand and gather her thoughts, and then I will quickly revert to English so the audience can know what's going on. Antonia, te voy a hacer la pregunta primero a ti, luego la traduzco al español para nuestros espectadores, que la mayoría son mujeres, y bueno, y luego te dejo contestar, ¿vale? Vale. Entonces, el año pasado sabemos que pasaste por el juicio que conocemos como el juicio del coño insumiso, pero me gustaría, para la gente que está fuera de España, porque creo que en España el caso es muy conocido, pero para la gente que está fuera de España me gustaría saber si nos podrías dar algunos detalles, quiénes fueron los demandantes, por qué fuiste a juicio, lo que pasó y qué crees que son las motivaciones de las personas que te llevaron a juicio. Traduzco rápidamente y te paso, ¿vale? So for the non-Spanish viewers, Antonia and two other women in Spain last year, they went through this trial that was later known as the trial of the coño insumiso. Roughly translated to English, it was the trial of the insubmissive vulva, or the insubmissive pussy. It was a very famous case in Spain. Antonia will tell us more about it. I basically asked if she could expand on the case and why was she taken to court by the Christian lawyers. Antonia, a ti.
Sí, bueno, nosotros fuimos enjuiciadas en el 2014, pero veníamos de una crisis económica muy fuerte, de modificación de las leyes, entre ellas la ley del aborto. Las mujeres, el movimiento feminista, luchamos muy fuerte y derrumbamos la ley del aborto que pretendía negarnos ese derecho, a ejercer ese derecho con esas libertades. Había muchas modificaciones y restricciones a la ley del aborto. Incluso cayó el ministro que estaba responsable de esa ley que cancelaba los derechos de las mujeres a decidir. Posterior a eso, nosotras somos denunciadas por salir un 1 de mayo con una vagina gigante por las calles de la ciudad a reivindicar ese derecho, el derecho al aborto, a decidir sobre nuestro cuerpo, nuestra sexualidad y todas las opresiones que vivimos las mujeres en nuestro cuerpo, de no tener vivienda, no tener empleo, los derechos sexuales y reproductivos. por ese motivo de haber salido con todos los permisos en regla y tal, fuimos denunciadas por un grupo ultracatólico que se hace llamar Asociación de Abogados Cristianos, que pertenece a un ala de la iglesia del Opus Dei y de esta gente que tienen un lobby europeo o mejor dicho internacional, que sostiene económicamente, que son los mismos que están apoyando a Donald Trump ahora mismo. O sea, es esta parte de la Iglesia Católica muy oscura, muy perversa, misógina, que odia a las mujeres y sus libertades, las que nos denunciaron a nosotras. Así estuvimos durante 5 años y medio en un juicio. En el primero salimos absueltas y fueron recurridos y pedían 3 años de cárcel a nosotras y pedían también multa. Digamos que este enjuiciamiento es un castigo a las mujeres por atrevernos a decirle al Estado que el cuerpo es nuestro, que no puede decidir sobre nuestros derechos, y sabemos por nuestras abogadas que hay listas que le llaman archivos clandestinos o listas negras, y ahí fuimos situadas estas 3 mujeres que nos acusaron. O sea, que fuimos seleccionadas para ser castigadas y que esto a su vez sirviera como un escarmiento al movimiento feminista, que en España es muy fuerte. Ahora mismo, por el COVID y la pandemia, estamos un poco desarticuladas, pero que siempre somos como el chivo expiatorio frente a una crisis económica, política, cultural, social, siempre es el movimiento feminista. Y bueno, a mí el castigo es por ser inmigrante también, por ser feminista y por haber participado. Gracias.
Gracias. Okay, so basically the trial of the insubmissive pussy is a trial that started in 2014, so it's been quite some years now. At that time, there were a lot of pretended modifications and restrictions to the law on abortion that they had. And Spain had also just come out of the economical crisis, so there were a lot of things that were not functioning at political nor social level. So on the 1st of May of 2014, Antonia and the rest of the migrant women's collectives get out to the streets of Sevilla with this gigantic vulva, basically protesting for the Catholic Church and society's church in general, and the will to control women's bodies. They had all the permits, everything was fine. They had all the right to protest. It's the 1st of May. Everybody takes to the streets. During and after this protest, they receive kind of a message saying that they've been convoked by the Association of the Christian Lawyers, which Antonia says is an association that has a lot of connections to the Opus Dei, but also to the extreme right that is now in power. She gave the example of Donald Trump. And she says that this the fact that they were denounced is because they hate women. They hate that there's such a thing as a woman's body autonomy, and they could not deal with the fact that a huge, like a gigantic vulva, I've personally seen it, was going on the streets of Sevilla. So for 5 years they had this this trial. The Christian lawyers, they appealed 3 times. They appealed based on offense to religious sentiments and offense to the Catholic Church. And later on, via their lawyers, Antonia discovered that they were in a kind of a blacklist of the Christian lawyers. So coincidentally, in this blacklist, there are a lot of women, a lot of migrant women. So it really shows that women are always the scapegoat of religious fundamentalism. Not religious, but fundamentalism in general, and restriction in general. So yeah, but they ended up winning the case last year, which I'm very, very, very happy about. Antonia, ¿qué crees que quiere, o sea, qué crees que demuestra realmente este intento de control, ¿no? Dice mucho sobre el rol de la Iglesia en España, ¿no? En relación a los derechos de la mujer.
Sí, bueno, la Iglesia es una institución que tiene más de 2000 años, es una institución fundamentalmente patriarcal, misógina, y era muy importante castigarnos, porque es un desafío que las mujeres nos apropiáramos de nuestro cuerpo y de nuestra vagina, de nuestro coño, porque el coño que le sirve al patriarcado para tener hijos o para la explotación sexual, lo aceptan y no dicen nada. Pero un coño rebelde que legitima sus derechos sexuales y reproductivos, a ese sí lo van a castigar. Pero además creo que la resistencia y la rebeldía del feminismo es un desafío al poder de la Iglesia, es un desafío a su poder y por eso pretendían castigarnos de esa manera.
I asked Antonia why the fact that she went through trial precisely through this association of Christian lawyers, it really says a lot about the role of the church and any religion in control of women's bodies. And she says that it's very important to say that they were used as punishment, they were used as example. Because when women take control of their bodies, it's always badly seen, but men don't have any problem in dealing with vaginas and vulvas when they're sexually exploiting us. But when we are taking ownership of that, of a part of our body, then it is a problem. So they did that to punish them. Muchas gracias, Antonia. You can hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. It's very rainy in Brussels, so it's very hard to have a swift connection. Alex, I know this may sound weird, but first of all, I really wanted to offer you my condolences on what happened in Poland. And I use this really strong word because for me, it's I don't see what other expression I could use in this case. I'm still a bit in shock of what happened, and I cannot even imagine what it is for the women that are in Poland over there. There was a very recent decision of the Constitutional Tribunal in Poland to ban abortions due to medical reasons. And as you've told me previously in another conversation, already 98% of abortions that were performed in Poland were due to medical reasons. So this bans virtually any form of abortion in Poland. So I was wondering if you could give us more or less a timeline for our viewers that are not maybe very familiar with this issue. This is not from today, it goes from before. We've also talked previously about the Black protests and the women's protests that were happening in Poland, in Warsaw. So I was wondering if you could tell us a bit more about what is happening in Poland right now and how exactly did we get to this situation?
Yeah, first of all, thanks, Adriana. I also think that condolences is a proper word because what's happening now is truly tragic, and I know it's left many, many women just utterly broken because it's been such a long fight for this not to happen. So I think many people were really shocked that the government would get to this point. When it comes to the timeline, basically when the current government, the current party actually got into power in 2015, ever since they've been announcing their plan to ban abortion due to religious reasons, so that we can baptize the baby, even if the baby will die. That's basically the logic behind it. It's very strictly linked to religious beliefs and thinking. So ever since they've been announcing it, there was a response of women, this women's organizing. And in 2016, the government were debating in the parliament the bill to fully ban abortion and also to penalize it. And directly in a response to that, women started organizing really quickly. Rapidly, they established Black protests. Later, that became known as Women's Strike, which was basically that masses of women took to the streets, all dressed in black, grieving the end of women's reproductive autonomy. And the response was so huge, it was really overwhelming, that the government backed down from the proposal. But ever since 2016, they've been bringing it back in many, many different forms. They've been debating it in the parliament, they've been getting signatures. And finally, now in 2020, the completely politicized Constitutional Tribunal passed the law, or it didn't really pass the law, it announced that abortion due to medical reasons is unconstitutional, which was just a shock to everyone in one way. In another way, it was not a shock because we all knew that was the plan of the government, but it just happened very abruptly. They just announced it. Also, it's not a coincidence that it's happening during a global pandemic when so many people are demobilized. So many women are not physically able to organize and to campaign politically. And even though that's the situation we're in, it's happening as a response to this announcement of the tribunal. So many people took to the streets, so many women. It's truly as if the revolution was taking place in the whole country. It's been mass protests, both in real life and online. It's been campaigning. It's been politicians taking over the parliament. It's been people in cities, in towns, in villages. It's literally everywhere. It's huge. And I think it's interesting to discuss what's happening to this movement now and whether it still upholds the foundation of the whole movement, which is women's reproductive autonomy, whether it's still truly on the agenda. That's the conversations that we're now having in Poland, I think.
Thank you. There's also been talks, photos, videos, like real life videos of police violence. I mean, I know there's not much to elaborate on that, but I was wondering, yeah, what is happening? Is it really like we see in the media? How are things getting really violent?
I guess it varies. In my personal experience, so the protest started a week ago, and I think most of us have been in the streets this whole time, every day. And I haven't really experienced or seen police brutality, but I know that that's the case in many cities. I'm currently based in Warsaw, and during one protest, the police used pepper sprays to stop the protesters. I know there are cities where the police is joining the protests. It's announcing their own strikes to join the revolution. In other places, the police have been using repression. So I don't think it's one-sided in that case. But we all know that the police has the power to use over the people on the streets, and there is a lot of fear that that's how the government is eventually planning to use them.
Mm-hmm. And are there specific demands on the ground? Because I imagine the most obvious demand is safe legal access to abortion, but I was wondering if there's any specificities from any women's groups. What is stemming from those?
Well, so the protests are led by an organization called the Women's Strike. And as you said, the main demand is access to safe abortion. But they've been campaigning for other purposes as well. So basically, there's a lot of conversation about eliminating violence against women, of accessing full rights as women. There's a lot of conversation about gaining or rather depoliticizing institutions of power in the country. I think especially now the protests are very much linked to what's happening politically in Poland, which is that the government is very quickly taking over political and legal institutions in the country. So, for example, the case with Constitutional Tribunal is a perfect example of that, as in the judges that were appointed illegally, and they are all linked to the party in power. And that's why there's a lot of campaigning about the regaining the threefold of power in the country and just making the legal institutions apolitical as well. There's a conversation about full access to contraception, also to sexual education. There is a lot of conversation about getting help to those groups in society that are most affected by the pandemic right now, which is it's actually a lot of groups. It's medical institutions and artists, business owners. It's truly becoming more of a fight for democracy, more generally understood, than only a fight for women's reproductive autonomy.
I think it's really interesting because it really shows how feminism cannot be dissociated or taken from any context that goes against. What I mean is that our fight can really, we need women everywhere. And I think it's even though it's a very sad thing that's happening here, I'm glad that it's also a propeller, a force to take things forward finally. Like, enough is enough. I think it's the message that the Polish women are giving out right now. Is just they've had enough.
Oh, definitely, yes. We're all very angry. Yes.
Okay, thank you so much, because it's very holistic, and I think it gives a great a big complete view to our viewers and spectators. So thank you for that. Antonia, estábamos hablando ahora con Alex del hecho de que hubo mucha represión policial por parte de la policía del Estado hacia las manifestantes y los manifestantes que están ahora en Polonia. Y eso me lleva a una cuestión que tenía para ti, porque esto también muy poca gente lo sabe, a lo mejor solo un poco los colectivos migrantes en España, pero tu asociación ya ha sido víctima de ataques de fascistas y de neofascistas. Un ejemplo de eso es que regularmente tenéis a swastikas que se dibujan en los muros y las paredes de vuestra asociación. Entonces me gustaría saber si nos podrías contar un poco de eso, cuáles son un poco las motivaciones de esta gente que os acosa, que os humilla, que os intimida, y bueno, en unión a eso, si nos podrías un poco hablar del Estado en España, del panorama político en relación a la extrema derecha. Pero voy solo a traducir esto para las espectadoras, ¿vale? We were talking about violence before, police violence, which brings me to my next question, which is about violence in the Spanish context. That it is not a very known situation, but the association that Antonia created and is running now, called Mujeres Supervivientes, regularly is a victim of attacks of neo-fascists. So the latest attacks that they had swastikas being painted on their walls. Regularly, also they have cars that scream, that call these the women that go to the association. They call them whores. They call them rojas, which is a very particular insult in Spain because of Franco and the kind of like people that are very, very melancholic of Frankism and that want to see that political system back. So I just basically asked Antonia if she could expand a bit on the attacks that the association has been suffering, What does it mean for women's reproductive autonomy? And what are the motivations of these groups? Why are they attacking women? Why are they attacking migrant women? Antonia, adelante.
Sí, pensamos que estos ataques fascistas de la extrema derecha, pues fundamentalmente son grupos muy violentos, organizados, machistas, misóginos, y bueno, siempre en este momento de crisis, pues hay que construir un enemigo, ¿no? Y qué mejor que ese enemigo sea una mujer, migrante, feminista, libertaria, que defiende los derechos de las mujeres. No creo que seamos el único enemigo, la única enemiga, pero sí somos un blanco para estos grupos organizados, a menos aquí en la ciudad de Sevilla. Sabemos por ahí, no lo podemos afirmar, que están vinculados a grupos de un partido de extrema derecha que aunque no gobierne en Andalucía, pero sí ha facilitado que gobiernen otros dos partidos de derecha. Entonces, digamos que han conquistado en Andalucía, pero en España entera, una gran fuerza política y un imaginario, la gente que está más frustrada, resentida con la crisis económica, que no ve una salida y que se han sentido representados y acogidos por estos discursos de odio. Creo que nunca se fueron los fascistas en España. Hay una herida abierta muy, muy grande con grupos progresistas de izquierda, con las mujeres y con estos grupos de derecha, ahora mismo de extrema derecha. Entonces, esta herida está abierta. También el año pasado se sacaron los restos de Francisco Franco, el dictador, el asesino, que muchas deben saber que con las mujeres las violaban, las torturaban, las asesinaban porque eran maestras, porque eran libertarias, porque hablaban del divorcio, porque hablaban del aborto. Entonces, eso se ha heredado, esos imaginarios, ese pensamiento, ese discurso, se ha actualizado en el presente, por supuesto, pero siguen vivos, nunca fueron los fascistas de España, y en cualquier coyuntura, en cualquier crisis, pues vuelven a emerger de manera más organizada, de manera más violenta, de manera más agresiva, y a nosotras nos atacan, pasan en sus autos gritándonos feminazis, putas, zorras, rojas, iros a sus países. Bueno, a esos grupos les molesta nuestra sola presencia. Nosotras hemos denunciado, aunque no tenemos el nombre y el apellido de estos personajes, pero hemos denunciado penalmente, jurídicamente, porque es importante que quede un antecedente y porque es importante visibilizar y denunciar, y no podemos normalizar la violencia, los fascismos, las agresiones, ni a las mujeres ni a ningún grupo político de la sociedad. Y nuevamente ponemos el cuerpo, la voz y la resistencia política a estos grupos. Gracias.
Okay, so Antonia is saying that the attacks that have been perpetrated against her association are attacks from the far right in Spain. They're very organized, ideologically driven groups. They're also very young people in these groups, which makes you think of the state of youth and how we are how we are so fragile, I think, in the face of radicalization. That's how I see it anyway. And she says that in times of crisis, we politicians and the structures of powers always have to find a scapegoat, and what better target than migrant feminist women. So she really believes that they are being targeted because they're migrant women, and because they run a social canteen, let's say, that hosts up to 120 people a day, and they serve food over there. Most of these people are from migrant backgrounds or directly first-generation migrants. So it's that makes them a very easy target. She says that these groups have ties to the political extreme right, which, from what I understand, is Vox, that really facilitates the extreme right now in Spain. But she also feels that it's very important for us to know that fascism and these ideals of fascism never really left Spain. They just got actualized, and they kind of got how do you say? They kind of adapted to the recent times, but that never really went away. Last year, they exhumated Franco's grave. So I think also that was, according to Antonia, a very big step in this collective imagination and actualization of fascist discourse, which has his tentacles until now. So yeah, they, as we were saying before, she says that they're regularly humiliated and intimidated. They call them whores. They tell them to go back to their countries, which is something that we hear a lot in Europe from the extreme right groups. So yeah, this is a situation. But she says that they have denounced, and that it's important for them to state that they will not back down, and they will always resist, and they will always offer this feminist resistance, which is what worries extreme right groups and generally the patriarchy and the men that compose it, that don't want our sexual and reproductive autonomy to even be a reality or something that we can even attain. Muchas gracias, Antonia, por eso. This question is more for you, Alex, although it's also kind of an invitation for us, all of us women, to think about this. I'm interested in what you think about this. But for us, from the network side, I think we've when we had the series on Whose Lives Matter on the when Trayvon Martin died, we did a series on Black Lives Matter, because we really wanted to center the question of race and class in a different perspective than most groups do. In this sense, it's really important for us to have a real global feminist perspective. And I think that there's kind of a blind spot around abortion, because it's something that has really been co-opted in a way under the motto of my body, my choice. Of course, I believe in women's autonomy. I believe in that, but I think it has been shown, like in the case of pornography and prostitution, that my body, my choice is something that can be co-opted so easily. And I think it's very dangerous if we use this motto a lot, if we repeat this mantra, because it gives way to so many other things. So I'm wondering, how can we as feminists really stand our grounds and really think of a discourse and a framework to talk on abortion? Because from one side, as in the case of Antonia with the Christian lawyers, we have this kind of will to overpower women from the extreme right, from the extreme religion. But then we look at the other side, we look at the so-called left, and we don't feel represented by it. So we're kind of lost in the middle. In my opinion, we're not lost. We know very clearly where we stand. But I was wondering, how do you feel about that? Do you think it's possible for us women to really find this method of working? According to you, like, what strategies could we adopt, or what could we do so we are not co-opted by any movement, and that we stay true to our vision, our ideals, our positioning, and we respect women and we thrive for women? How do you think this can be done, Alex?
Mm-hmm. Wow, it's a really complex question, but I think it's central to our conversation about women's reproductive rights, about abortion. I think it's really important to realize that this whole attack, this vicious attack on women's reproductive autonomy, is both a basis but also a sign of the system that we live in. It's this desire to completely, fully control the female sex, as I see it. That's why when the
Alex, are you still there?
Grieving, because to me, hello? Yeah, hello. Did I lose my
Sorry.
connection? I think. I'm sorry.
No, it broke a little bit.
Apologies.
No, it's fine.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So as I was saying, yeah, when I was grieving when it was announced, because to me it was directly saying we do not care about women. Women are incubators. Women are bodies that we can control. We do not see women as fully autonomous human beings who can make informed decisions about their bodies and their sexuality. That's why this concept of reproductive autonomy is super important to me, because it's not about whether I can have an abortion or not. It's really about having this power to decide on my use of contraception, on my pregnancy, whether I want to continue with it or not. It's about taking hold of my own bodily autonomy. And that's why this whole conversation about my body, my choice is very, to me, it's simplifying this very complex issue, because it's kind of as if access to abortion was suddenly saving women from oppression, or suddenly, I don't know, freeing women to be safe from violence and to be treated equally. When in reality, we know that that's not the case at all. Even in Poland, under communism, women had full access to abortion. And then the regime fell in 1989, and this right was evoked. But the reality of women's lives did not really change drastically, even when they had access to abortion, when they didn't, because women were still subjugated as a class. And we have to see how this this whole conversation about abortion and the restriction of it is linked to structural inequalities that women as a political and social class face, because women from different economic backgrounds will experience this abortion ban very differently as well. Of course, we all know that women in the most vulnerable positions will be affected, mostly migrant women, homeless women, and just women from disadvantaged socioeconomic backgrounds will truly be affected because they will not be able to go abroad. They will not be able to gain money for the procedure. It's how it's this conversation is way more complex than just having a choice or having a say. But of course, we all know that it affects all women in that sense that we are all of female sex. And this contempt for women and this desire to control women and their body and their bodily integrity and autonomy is an expression of the patriarchy, truly. So even though different women will be affected differently, it's truly this uniting issue for all of us as a class, because it's so directly linked to being a woman. Yeah.
I think what also we need to take into consideration is that just as in the case of prostitution and sexual exploitation, we're not talking enough about men. Because to put it very rudely, maybe we have abortions because of penetrative sex. We have abortions because there is such a thing as a penis that willingly or not goes into a woman's body. And once again, where it's us who are going through that, it's us who's taking to the streets, but men still rape us. There is still such a thing as undesired relations with men, and we are aborting because of men. I mean, this doesn't happen in a lesbian relationship and things like this. We are having men raping us, men killing us, and once again, we're not even talking about them. It's it's us who will be penalized. In the case of Poland, now it's illegal. Then women who need to get an abortion, they will either have to do it in super unsafe conditions or go abroad for that. In this case of pandemic, when are women going even to be able to go abroad? Where is the money to perform those things? It's like it's also a very big problem of class, but also of not putting the center of attention where it really needs to be, which is men. So I think this is something, I mean, it's an open discussion. It's a reflection that we need to take into account when we talk about these things. But of course, it could be for a whole other discussion. We could take hours here. But I wanted to thank you so much, Alex, for being with us here today and giving us an overview of what is going there. Once again, really my condolences, but I have a lot of faith in the Polish women. I don't know many, but I've seen from the things you've told me and the images that we're now seeing online that you women are so powerful and you're not afraid. So I'm glad that we have you sisters over there so we can take an example of them. And muchas gracias, Antonia, por también venir hoy a compartir. Lo siento por este formato así un poco bizarro, pero me ha gustado mucho escuchar y creo que es muy importante que la gente se entere de que estos ataques fascistas no son cosas del imaginario de la gente, que realmente ocurren y que todos estos movimientos de control reproductivo sexual de la mujer están bien conectados. Tenemos una cuestión para ti, lo veo aquí. ¿Te la puedo leer? Okay. Before saying goodbye to you,
Sí.
I'm going to just address a question that was asked to Antonia. En España tienen acceso a servicios de salud sexual y reproductiva las mujeres migrantes y a qué tipo de obstáculos se enfrentan especialmente las mujeres indocumentadas. So now Antonia was asked a question about what kind of health services exist for migrant women in what regards health and reproductive rights, and what big obstacles do migrant women face in this regards, especially those that are undocumented. ¿Te la repito la cuestión o la puedes leer? Aquí está en el chat si quieres. No sé si lo puedes leer.
Sí. Bueno, por ejemplo, las mujeres migrantes y no migrantes no tenemos acceso, por ejemplo, a los anticonceptivos, nos cuestan dinero. Por ejemplo, los anticonceptivos nos cuestan dinero. El tema de la salud sexual y reproductiva no es un tema central dentro de la salud pública. Las personas que realizan campañas, educación, prevención, atención en todo este mundo que tiene que ver con la salud sexual y reproductiva, fundamentalmente lo hacen las ONGs. Lo hacen las ONGs porque no es un tema central dentro de la salud sexual y reproductiva. Las mujeres migrantes sí, hay comunidades autónomas donde ellas no se van a acercar a ninguna de las instituciones por temor, porque no tienen los papeles, por el miedo de que te van a expulsar, por supuesto. Y bueno, hay una exclusión, hay una violencia estructural y tampoco es un tema central dentro de la salud pública. Lo hacen las ONGs.
Antonia says that sexual and reproductive health is not a central theme for the public administration in Spain. So basically the burden falls into women's groups and mostly NGOs. I'm going to have to stop this talk because otherwise I'm going over time, but I wanted to thank you both again. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. We keep fighting together. We're in different parts of the globe, but we are all connected and sisterhood is global. Muchas gracias, Antonia.
Gracias.
Adiós.
Bye.
Bye.